You're tuned into the Writing Community Chat Show, the live streaming YouTube podcast that brings you the stories of authors, screenwriters, and more. Indie or established, this show's for the community, and we invite you to be a part of it. Head to thewritingcommunitychatshow.com for more info. The WCCS. Together as one, we get it done.
Hello, happy Friday, and welcome to the Writing Community Chat Show. We're excited to be here tonight. Thank you for watching. Please like and share this around. It would help us greatly. Hello, and welcome to the Writing Community Chat Show. It is Friday. Well done. You made it through the week. Thank you very much for joining us. We've got a great guest tonight. I'm so excited to talk to him. But first, obviously, I'll address the elephant in the room. Agate is not here. We are slightly concerned. He went to Harrogate Crime Writing Festival last weekend, and we've not heard anything from him. We don't know if he made it home safely after a weekend on the booze. So, Writing Community, if he is on your sofa, if you adopted an agate during Harrogate, please send him back. His family probably miss him. And yeah, we're not at the stage of phoning the police yet. But if we don't hear from Agate soon, we'll probably do that. But with Agate not being here, we've got a very, very good replacement. You may be familiar with this person because she is absolutely incredible. She does step in when we ask her to. And, you know, we couldn't ask for a better Agate 2.0. And ladies and gentlemen, here's Anna Bloom.
Hi.
Hello, how are you?
I love the Chris Agate 2.0 mention. It's great.
Yes. As our guest rightly said before, that you've made it to official bracelet status with Agate 2.0. In case anyone couldn't see what that said, it does say Agate 2.0. So your friends have picked up on the fact that you replaced Agate quite
Every time you ask me to come on, I immediately tell my group chat, and they're like, "Oh my God, we're going to watch it live." I'm like, "Oh, thank you."
Yeah, I love that. And if Agate doesn't return, then maybe you're not Agate 2.0. Maybe we make it a permanent position. So we're laughing now, but if we find him in a bush somewhere, then we're going to be worried.
Then we're going to be a little concerned.
Yeah, but your phrase, actually, every time I see you, what's the first thing you say when I ask you if everything's okay?
Not dead yet.
Not dead yet. So we'll hold out for Agate as well. We hope that that's not the case. There's people in the comments, so hello to you. Let us know what you're doing this weekend. If you're reading, if you're writing, if you're after some tips in particular today. Remember, obviously, in the third part of the show, we always ask the guests your questions. We get the questions that you really want to know the answers to asked on the show live. And yeah, if it's about the books in particular, you can ask them. But equally, if you want to ask some random questions, hello to everyone in the chat. I'm going to do the admin side here. Hello, Linda. Hello, Dan. Nice to see you guys. And Haley, hello to you. Brilliant. So everyone is in there. But yeah, thank you so much for joining us live on a Friday. And yeah, Anna, how's your week been?
It's, you know what? It has been interesting. It's been real interesting.
Explain.
Well, so yesterday I flew from Krakow to Frankfurt. I got stuck in what was supposed to be like under 2-hour layover from Frankfurt to London. Ended up being almost 10 hours. Wow. And at first they didn't know if they were going to put us on that last flight that went out. So we would have had to get a 7 a.m. flight this morning. So we get into London around midnight-ish, 11:30. They lost our bags.
Oh, no.
Yep.
I mean, we've got a horror writer on today, but that is a horrific event in terms of losing your bags when you're going traveling. You're on tour. You've joined the Writing Community Chat Show on tour, but you've lost your bags. So fingers crossed those bags.
But they might be getting delivered. They're probably getting delivered tonight.
I reckon Agate has stolen those bags.
Because he got jealous.
Yeah, maybe he got jealous. Or maybe, if we were going to be on the lighter side, he's going to deliver those bags to you as a surprise.
And then we'll know where he is. And then we'll know where he is.
Yeah.
Hey, speaking of horror writing, how do you feel about the fact that your book is coming out soon?
Oh yeah, I don't normally promote my own stuff on the show, but yeah, I am excited that that's going to happen. Yeah, no, it's exciting. Horror, obviously, I'm not very well tuned on horror. It's the first time out, but I'd love to obviously know more. And today's guest is definitely going to help us with that. But yeah, exciting times. So,
I mean, I'm
without further ado,
I'm halfway through, so I like it.
Nice, halfway through. Like
All right,
it.
listen.
Yeah, I'm glad you like it, but I'm gonna try and get some actual tips today on horror writing, because I definitely want to improve, even though you like it. So, welcome, obviously, to today's show. We're thrilled to have a very special guest with us, an acclaimed, and I actually refer to him as a legend of horror writing, which I firmly stick by. But he's the brilliant mind behind the gripping novels Ghost Eaters, What Kind of Mother, and the Remaking, just to name a few. Today, we'll dive into his journey as a writer, talk about his latest projects, and get answers to your burning questions. So if you've got any of those questions, stick them in the chat now. We'll highlight them throughout, and we'll ask them during the final bit of the show. But sit back, relax, and get ready for a horrifyingly good conversation with Clay McLeod Chapman. Ooh, if I can get him on. There you go.
Boo! I just want to jump out. That's amazing. That was a wonderful little intro. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And thank you for joining us. We're so excited to chat to you. Where are you coming from in the world today?
Right out there is Brooklyn, New York. So it's a sunny day, no rain. The temperature is down, no heat wave at the moment. So it feels like a good Brooklyn Friday.
Nice. Happy days.
It sounds terrifying. Anna, you're on tour and now you're just going to have to wear the same clothes for the next 5 days?
So we're going to be here till August 4th. So like 10 days. But our bags are supposedly en route here. So they might be getting delivered tonight.
Do they know where they are at least? Like, is it?
They found them. They found them. What it looks like happened, according to all the tracking info, is they got left in Frankfurt. And so they had to fly in from Frankfurt to London. And now basically they had to first fly them in and then find them and then figure out where. And then they had our address of the Airbnb where we're staying to deliver them.
Wow. My God. So it's not like, oh, your clothes are now in Copenhagen. They have to go through Brussels. They'll make it to Australia by tomorrow. And then, we'll
sometime next year you'll get
them. Yeah. Well, you are in London, and there's a shop that a lot of people are very passionate about in the UK, especially in situations like this where they need to buy some cheap clothes. And if there's a Primark nearby, go in there and absolutely treat yourself. Have a field day. Yeah. But I'm not endorsing Primark. There are other places to go, and I'm going to stop talking before I get into some sort of legal battle and talk about obviously yourself. So I'm going to play a quick video, which is called "The Road to Writing." And Clay, after we get back from that, if you could just tell us how writing became something in your life, that would be fantastic. So here's the video, and if I don't come back on it after this video because my Wi-Fi doesn't work, then you've got me. I know that. Right. Oh.
He's back.
I'm back. Everyone's back. There was a moment where there was like, oh God, the video was like a millisecond long. I was like, oh God, I got to get my story straight.
Yeah, sorry about that. That was my technical ability. I'm not getting used to it. But Anna, if you kick us off, or Clay, if you could kick us off with how writing became something in your life, that'd be fantastic.
Absolutely. I mean, I feel like I have this kind of pat origin story, which is, I mean, I was a terrible student. Like I was one of those kids that like, if there was a window, my attention just absolutely went out it. And my grades totally showed it from a very early age. And it took it took one teacher to kind of pull me aside and say, Clay, if you keep this up, you're going to be repeating the 6th grade all over again, and we need to hike that grade up. This was my English teacher, and she struck a deal with me where she said, like, if you enter this writing contest, I'll give you some extra credit, and we'll bulk that grade up and get you on in the 7th grade, and that will be that. And me, being the kind of duplicitous young man that I was, I figured the more times I entered this writing competition, the more extra credit I would get, and I would totally pass the 6th grade. So I wrote like 3 stories. This was a playwriting competition, and I had never written a play, never wanted to write a play, never thought about writing a play. I just wanted to pass 6th grade English. And you know, Shakespeare, they were not. I mean, these were, you know, kind of like A, B, like, I'm hungry, here's some ice cream, thank you. And I got my extra credit and I passed, and I figured that would be the end of that. And but lo and behold, like a month later, I get this letter in the mail saying, congratulations, one of your plays has been selected to be a part of this statewide presentation of young playwrights in the state of Virginia, where I'm originally from. And it was honestly the most kind of eye-opening experience I've ever had. Like, I spent my summer kind of amongst other like-minded, writers, young writers, and our plays were produced, and it was just kind of utter catnip. And I just wanted to keep doing that year after year after year. So I, entered this contest. It was open at that point from like grade 6 to 12. So I just kept going back and back, still failing school miserably, but class was ultimately kind of in session during these summer outings. And yeah, I just honestly, like, that's all it took. And I'm rambling, forgive me, but like, what playwriting kind of informed me was that I love first person narratives. Like, I love the idea that on stage, if you have a monologue, it's, you are in essence kind of addressing the audience, you're addressing the reader. So I just wanted to kind of take what I loved about theater and kind of boil it down into text, like into short stories. So from that moment on, I've just been writing these little short story, mini mono narratives that all kind of, if I had my druthers, I would just be writing first person narrative till the cows come home. But because I just love the idea of, hi, I'm your narrator, take my hand, I'm going to lead you through this story. And do you hear that banging in the walls? Yeah, I murdered my next door neighbor and buried him in behind the bricks, but I'm not crazy. Like, I just love like that, just that idea that like you as the reader, you as the audience would suddenly be kind of complicit in this this narrative, this story. Like, I thought that was amazing. That like you could take the proverbial fourth wall of theater and kind of tuck it behind the reader so that they are suddenly kind of like baked into the tale. So yeah, that was ultimately how it kind of started. I don't know if if that's answering the question. I mean, I could mouth off about like how, where I went from there, but like, yeah, like that ultimately was the beginning. And I as an only child, single mom kind of family, like, I just had a lot of time on my hands, and I just carved out this kind of young existence, writing, gazillions of these little mini monologues that I would tell the publishing people, like, yeah, this is a short story, and I would tell the theater people, like, yeah, it's just a monologue. But that duality of text kind of ended up being this thing that, followed me all through high school, all through college. And I mean, I guess the kind of punctuation mark to it all is that when I was in school, in college, I had that moment, that kind of panic attack of like, I've spent 4 years doing nothing but writing these stories, and what am I going to do with myself? And in essence kind of freaked out senior year. And at that point, I mean, this is like 200 years ago, not pre-internet as much as just like, what is internet? But I went to the local bookstore and found the kind of how to, like the kind of get your stuff published section, and the writer's market, that big telephone book of a publication. I sat down with that thing and a notepad, like basically like sat in the Barnes & Noble aisle for the whole afternoon and just kind of like scored through that writer's market, looking for every address, every telephone number for any agent, any publisher who I thought might be interested in what I had to offer. And, you know, I think I ended up like reaching out to 30, 40 different literary agents who I kind of naively, youthfully, optimistically wanted to believe might be curious in what I had been doing for the last 4 years. And, you know, I think like 99.9 of them wrote back and said, you know, thanks, but no thanks. We'll talk later after you graduate. But one totally like wrote back like right out of the bat and said, right out of the gate and said like, hey, this is pretty interesting. Because I had submitted a story along with a cover letter, and they said, if you like this, there's more where that came from. And this one agent kind of took me up on it, and she asked, you know, started with 1, and then it went to 4, and then it went to 20, and then it went to everything. Like she said, send me everything you've got. And I think it was like 70 stories. And long story short, forgive me, I think like 3 weeks after establishing contact with this literary agent, she got me a 2-book deal with Hyperion, which was under the Disney banner. And that was like 2 weeks before graduating from undergrad. And I, you know, totally walked out into the real world with a book deal, and that's kind of my Cinderella story.
That's incredible.
Wow.
Yeah. And then I learned how, you know, getting a book onto the shelf is a miracle. Getting a book off the shelf and into readers' hands, I still don't know how to do that. Like that's the kind of learning curve that like I, you know, remain, that, you know, that's the challenge that I wanted someone else to tell me how to do that. Anna, how do you do that? How?
That is such a great question. Why don't we ask somebody else?
Let's ask the audience. How do people buy our books?
Yeah, I mean, if you've got an answer to that question and you are watching, then drop it in the chat, because I think we'd all be interested to know. But yeah, I think, Clay, I'm going to ask sort of like a question that's going to incorporate all the sort of ideas that were cropping up as you were talking about that. You spoke about obviously winning the competition and that coming into play. And I'm wondering if that sort of sparked your confidence to keep going, or if you were already hit by the writing bug at that point and that just sort of fueled it a little tiny bit more. But I suppose my question is, I've read Two Talented Bastards by Stephen King in his You Like It Darker series. And he talks about talent being a sort of innate ability there. So my question linked to that, and I don't know why I thought of that when you were talking, but I did, is, do you think that talent that you had was a raw talent, or do you think it's something that you crafted over time and just got better at being a writer?
Oh, man. That's a really good question. And I feel like, you know, it's so funny because I honestly feel like I've been learning a lot of the wrong lessons. And, you know, it's so interesting because, like, you know, to whatever degree, you always get the no's first. Like there's always like this kind of wave of rejection. And like, I'm still getting rejected like 20 plus years later. And like, you know, that, you know, to answer your kind of first question about the competition, you know, it was this external validation that said, hey, you have something here. Let's, you know, let's see what this is. And that was honestly all, like, that was the tipping point into, like, I loved engaging with readers, whether it was an audience or a reader, like, you know, someone reading something specifically to themselves, like just the kind of interplay between storyteller and reader / audience member, like that kind of composition just felt, it was just magical. And as an only kid, you know, I could either be watching TV or kind of reaching out and touching someone, like that idea of like wanting to engage with others. I found the way that that kind of validity that I found was through just connecting by way of storytelling. And I, you know, to kind of answer your other question, it's just this, I don't know if it's confidence. I actually don't think it's confidence. And I don't know if it's privilege. I want it to be something other than that. But there's been this kind of like dogged determination to keep doing it no matter what. And at the kind of, at the risk of, being a starving artist, at the risk of being, like if we look at like, I don't know, like 20 some years of being able to kind of do this, there've been a lot of kind of lean, fallow years of just like, this is, being a writer, being a professional writer, publishing, like it just doesn't always hit. And like, I feel like the amount of people saying no, or no thanks, or sorry, like that list is just a mile long. And it's been really challenging. But what I've found over the course of a couple decades of doing this is that I'm just trying to convince one person, and like narrowing the scale or the scope of what my goal is of like, can I convince one person that I'm worth their time, that my writing is worth their time? And, at one point that person was an agent, and then at another point, like that agent like was like, I believe in you. Like somehow I had convinced this one person to kind of pluck me up and like say like, I'm going to give this a shot. And it was amazing because honestly, like the challenge of just convincing one person, like it's insurmountable a lot of the times. And I don't know if for me the feeling is confident. Like I'm in my older I'm like encroaching upon middle age, and like I'm still kind of battling on almost like an hourly basis, like this is not good. This is like I almost think in a weird way I'm dealing more with kind of internalized stress and anxiety that stuff just never goes away. And yet nevertheless, like the kind of persistence is this, it's some variation of like, well, what else am I going to do? Or I don't know what else to do. Or this is what I've always been, what I've always identified as. And the scary thing is it's worth the risk and worth the kind of toll, whether that's financial, personal, you name it, like to kind of continue to do this than it is to do anything else. Did that come close to answering the question? I think I like gave you 10 minutes of like blah, and then maybe there was
no, it definitely wasn't blah. I loved it. Yeah, I thought it was great. I'm really, we have a lot of authors on the show. We've had over 200 people, I think, now on the show, and everyone talks about that sort of, it's almost imposter syndrome that, it doesn't matter how successful, we've had people that have sold hundreds of millions of books on the show, and they still doubt themselves when it comes to the next release or the next story or the next idea. And I think it's really important for writers to know, a lot of people do watch the show for tips and advice, and, just know it's never going to go away. You're always going to have that state of anxiety. So just keep writing anyway. But yeah, Anna, have you got any questions off the back of that?
So I do have a question. So you were talking about how like it's not necessarily confidence that drives you to write, and also how you really like those kinds of characters that directly address the audience. So I was kind of wondering, is that like unsurety in when you write the reason why you like those kind of monologue characters or those direct addresses so much, and how that kind of changed over time as you got into the writing process?
Yeah. I mean, it's a funny thought, but I do like that idea of like, you know, writing itself is such a solitary art, and yet like we're always kind of like reaching for some kind of invisible presence on the other side of that story, you know, whether, you know, whoever that person is, we're never going to know who they are, but there's such kind of like value to that idea of like connection. Like I've lived, you know, I don't know, what am I trying to say? I do feel like there is this idea of like kind of reaching across the gulf and really like trying hard to kind of like connect with readers, connect with an audience, and, you know, using first person as the kind of vehicle to do that. It's funny how like there's still that disconnect of like, well, I don't know if anyone's reading this. I don't know if there's someone on the other side. I don't know if I'm like kind of speaking into the void. But it is amazing how when someone answers back, you know, whether that's because you're doing a live event and you have a kind of living, breathing audience in front of you versus, I don't know, a Goodreads review or, you know, like a social media kind of response, you know, like there is like the ability to kind of find someone on the other side and have them answer back is, you know, positive, negative, or otherwise, like it's suddenly all of a sudden you're like, oh my God, I'm engaging, like writing, like our writing is suddenly kind of bringing, it's connecting two different kind of contrary forces together that are kind of yearning for that connection. I love that. That's magical. That's kind of worth its weight. Maybe more than the financial gain of it.
Maybe only slightly. So, Clay, it wouldn't be right of me to skip on to the next question, next section of the show without asking you for some tips for writing horror, because obviously we talked about how much of a legend you are in that area, and as you've said, 20 years of writing horror. You definitely picked up more than a few tips that you can give to the audience. So, if we just narrow it down to 3, what would your 3 tips be for writing horror? And then off the back of that, I'm going to make you think a little bit more. But what are you writing about when you write? Does that change on a book-to-book basis, or is there a constant thing that you think, this thing terrifies me, I'm always writing about it in some capacity? So top 3 tips, and then what you're writing about.
Okay. Top 3 tips. I've been fortunate enough to get 12 different books out there, maybe 14 at this point. After this kind of next publication cycle, I'll have had 14 books out, and that's amazing. Like I feel like that's a blessing. Bless you. What's been nice about, like, say, the last 3 or 4 books, I've kind of shifted into this notion of like, what's my skin in the game? What scares me, and writing from that place. I think if you've got any skin in the game, it's one thing to like, oh, I'm going to write about vampires today, or I'm going to write about this serial killer, and that's going to be really scary. Like, that's fine. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. But like, that almost feels like kind of like looking externally, internally, where like I've made this kind of shift for myself personally of like looking internally to the external. Like, what's the thing that scares me right now, and letting that be the kind of guiding force. And it's, you know, it seems like such a simple kind of thing, but like, honestly, like, if you're not scared of the thing you're writing about, it might not be as effective to the people reading it. I find now that, like, with the last few books, the writing itself is kind of enriched with a certain kind of scare, because I'm scared of it too. And I guess point two, if I could go in a time machine and kind of go back to that kind of grade school teacher who just kept saying, like, write what you know, write what you know, write what you know. I would just ask to kind of just fudge it a little bit and say, instead of write what you know, perhaps write what you feel. That, like, we all have these kind of basic kind of Joseph Campbell kind of like primal emotions that all connect us to one another. And those fears, those kind of emotions are the things that kind of, you can kind of put whatever mask, whatever kind of like, whatever the vessel is, those emotions are the things that kind of connect writers to readers. And if you can feel them, if there are things that you yourself have felt, whether it's love, pain, grief, happiness, sad, like that, writing from that place, I feel, as opposed to like needing to writing from experience. I mean, you can write from experience, but like it's the emotional content that always feels like that's what connects me. And then a third tip, I mean, I'm going to be an advocate for first person narrative. Like, I'm sorry to all the third personers out there, but like, what's so great about first person is that it kind of drops you like right smack dab into the story. And it draws the reader in a little bit more, because all of a sudden it's like, hi, I'm the narrator, like, follow me. Like, it's just ripping off Poe. Like, I would write Poe stories till the cows come home if I could, because he got something so exciting of like that idea of like making the reader feel complicit, culpable. They're listening to these characters kind of like spill their guts, and I don't know, like, there's something kind of puts you in the trenches, which I like. But that's a personal bias.
No, definitely, I like that.
And then the last question was basically, do I write about the same thing, or am I writing about, does that change kind of book to book?
Yeah, I kind of always phrase this question, like, because we've had people on the show that say in the past that they've wrote a book. Obviously, you got 14 out there, but then a few years later, they've reread that book or looked back at the book and they've gone, oh my God, that is what I was writing about. And obviously, I know that can be really personal. I'm not asking you to go into those sort of depths, but is this something that you always write about that you think, oh God, it's come up again? I didn't even intend it to, but it did. Like, it came up.
I'm a father of 2 kids, and I have been writing a lot about parenthood and like either the fears of parenthood or the kind of complexity of parenthood, whether that's from the child's point of view or the parent's point of view, like that fluctuates. But like family, I think family has been, and that's such a broad, topic, but I do find that a lot of the things that I'm exploring are just the fears and complexities of family. And if I'm gonna kind of lay everything out on the, like, look at all the different books, I'll be like, yeah, that's a family book, that's a family book, that's a family book. But maybe the thing that's internal to the book, the story itself tends to fluctuate. I hope. Fingers crossed.
Yeah, definitely. So Anna, have you got any questions before we move on to part 2 of the show, which is what's the story?
I think my biggest question is, and I don't think it's one that we've quite touched on yet, is how did you get into horror writing?
I mean, I was just a sucker for horror from the get-go. Like that was just like in the system. There's that one babysitter who probably put on that one horror movie like way too young, and I was hooked. I mean, I remember like Saturday afternoons, you could watch TBS, and they would have the horror film, the horror matinees that would just be like you know, be something so kind of cornball, like, you know, Saturday the 14th or Student Bodies, but they were amazing. Like, they were terrifying to me. I just like imbibed horror from, you know, like, just like riding my bike to the video store, like just like being like existing, like living in the horror aisle. Like, even though I was too young to actually rent these movies, like I just loved looking at the VHS or the DVD covers, because those were stories in of themselves that just kind of like utterly fascinated me. That, like, you know, and more often than not, they tended to be more frightening than the actual films themselves, because your imagination is kind of projecting, like, oh, what's the story behind this movie, or what's, you know, I want to see what, I want to imagine what that film's about. So almost inevitably, the film itself would kind of be a bit of a letdown. Not always, but like most of the times. But yeah, so when it came time to, like, what are the stories that I want to tell? You know, if it wasn't straight up horror, it was always kind of horror adjacent. And I think a lot of that had to do with Poe, where there's just that idea of, like, you know, there are darker currents of, you know, and the kind of the psychological kind of like tonnage of people, like just being able to kind of like hear, you know, the kind of the murderers and the madmen kind of like spin their own yarn or tell their side of the story. Like, I just love that. I just love that. Yeah.
Definitely. So after 20 years of horror, just before we move on, how do you keep it fresh, sort of in your mind, in terms of, like, you know, I should imagine I've tried to dabble into horror a little bit, but I'm tapping into those fears that I've got. But I think once I've done those fears, I don't necessarily know if I'm going to have a lot to say about that again, if you know what I mean. So how do you do that? How do you channel that? What advice could you give to somebody in that scenario?
Well, I mean, speaking personally, I feel like there's a lot to be afraid of right now. Like, you know, like the world, like the kind of volume is kind of cranking up on kind of tensions and kind of fears, and you know, I go to bed more afraid now than, say, 10 years ago, 15 years ago. I feel like I'm the frog in the boiling pot, and I don't know that the pot's boiling, but like the temperature seems to be getting hot in here. But you know, how to keep it fresh in the writing, you know, it's I don't know if I'm answering the question, but I will say this. If I have a story, I have to write it out of my system. And it's not a question of, like, is it fresh or am I telling it right? Like, I feel like I'm pretty prolific, and you know, some of that is just kind of like exorcism. Like, it's like, get the story out. Because if I don't get the story out, it's just stuck in here, and I'm just it's like lingering in the back of my head. So I need to get the story out, even if it's a short story. More often than not, it is a short story, but like that ability to kind of like almost do like some kind of like creative spring cleaning, because then after the story is written, or a draft of the story is written, I can kind of look at it and be like, oh my God, I've written this story, the same story, like 5 friggin' times. Like, that's going to go in the shelf, or that'll never see the light of day. But it's no longer in me. It's no longer like stuck. So the freshness question that you're asking kind of comes almost after the fact for me personally, where I don't question that, like, but is this new? Am I repeating myself? Like it's like, no, I really want to tell this story. I'm going to get that story out of my system. And then once it's out and the revising process begins, I can say to myself, like this feels trodden. So how do I either make it feel new, make it feel fresh, or does it never see the light of day?
I love that answer. That's great. And obviously talking about story, which leads us into the great section of what's the story. So I'm going to play a short video. And then after this, if you could give us a pitch to, I was going to say your latest novel, but it's entirely up to you what you want to pitch. Or you could pitch multiple if you if you wanted to do that.
Okay.
But yeah. Okay, so here's what's the story.
I might take you up on the multiple pitches. I hope that's okay. Because when we talked about this way back when, we were talking about this little novel that came out here in the States and in the UK called What Kind of Mother? And this is my kind of like Southern Gothic folk horror novel, which is all about a palm reader who may or may not be a real kind of psychic, kind of moves back to her hometown, makes her living kind of reading the palms of, members of her community. And she reconnects with an old flame and, sees something that may or may not be, in effect, an actual psychic epiphany. And there's a missing persons case. And, it's basically my Nicholas Sparks novel that just goes like right off the rails. It starts meet cute and ends up being pretty out there. But next week here in the States, I have this lovely little novelette that comes out called Stay on the Line. And it's all about a coastal town, a Chesapeake Bay town that is affected by a big hurricane and wipes this community out. And in kind of rebuilding themselves, one of the only things that ends up actually standing up still is this, decommissioned telephone booth. But the telephone booth starts ringing, and people, for those who answer the call, the people that the members of this community have lost are calling back from somewhere else, and they want you to stay on the line. It's really cool because it's got illustrations by this amazing illustrator, Trevor Henderson, who's in Canada, and his work is amazing and pretty much worth it, worth the price alone. In September, I have this other novella that's coming out called Kill Your Darling, which is kind of a true crimey grief horror kind of book about a man, like a husband and a wife who 40 years ago lost their son, and they still don't know what happened to their son. And his wife ends up kind of signing this man up for a creative writing workshop. And he uses the creative writing workshop as a means to kind of get closure, for this horrific thing that happened in their lives, that reality never gave him. And then all of a sudden, reality and, fiction, kind of fact and fiction, start kind of blurring together. And then my last pitch, I swear, last pitch. In January, I have a new novel coming out here in the States from Quirk, and in the UK from Titan Books, and it's called Wake Up and Open Your Eyes. And it is it's a doozy, like just imagine that like half of the country here in the States is suddenly possessed by demons. Which half kind of depends on where you get your news from. So, totally fiction.
No, I love that. Clay, can you take us to any sort of light bulb moments and sort of take us behind the scenes of how these stories came to be in your mind? And if you can remember sort of, I don't know, whether you were like walking a dog and you thought, oh, that's it, I've got to write this one. Any of those moments, if you can, for any of those books you've just pitched.
I mean, it's this should have been one of my writing tips, but like I look to the newspaper. Like I subscribe to a bunch of different newspapers. I still get the print publications because I just love flipping through and reading these newspaper articles because like every so often you'll find something that'll just be like, this is just mind-blowing, and like truth is always going to be stranger than fiction. And like for Stay on the Line, it was because of this article someone showed me where they were like, look at this newspaper clipping about in Japan there's this this like shrine, like they've kind of like, you know, because there was this town that was hit by this massive tsunami, and you know, one of the only things that kind of survived was this telephone booth. And so they kind of are like, they kept the telephone booth as this kind of place in which, you know, people could go and kind of have a moment of kind of silent contemplation and kind of look back to like those they've lost in the tsunami. And I read that and I said to myself, God, that is an astounding story of like, you know, of profound grief. So what do? I exploit it. I take the story and like, you know, kind of like bend it and break it and kind of manipulate it and turn it into this completely, you know, layer it with metaphor and layer it into the supernatural. And because until it no longer, like, it may have its root in history, but it's no longer that particular story. It's now become my story. Same thing with Kill Your Darling. It was because of an article I read like probably like 10, 15 years ago now. And those stories, they just kind of stick with you. And, you know, it's like looking into those kind of like factual events and saying, well, what's the kind of the perspective that kind of tells its own story. I don't know, like it's just, there's something kind of magical about like looking to the news as a way to kind of like feel inspired.
Halo says she loves your pictures, and she also says the palm reader once read her palm and just sighed, disappointed, which is brilliant. If you're watching now and you've got any questions or comments like Halo's, just drop them into the chat, because we are about 3 or 4 minutes away from the writing community questions section. So if you've got questions, send them in. I'm going to ask one question of my own off the back of that, because obviously you've mentioned the paranormal quite a few times. I don't know if you want to expose yourself in this way, but have you had any sort of paranormal activity happen to yourself, or where has your interest come from with the paranormal?
No, I've had zero paranormal activity. I would be so happy to have some paranormal activity. I am like desperate for it to happen. I think I'm kind of like on the kind of agnostic spectrum. Like I don't believe it, but I would be totally happy to. I'm gonna close this window because there's a leaf blower right out. But
yeah, go for it.
Hear me as
Is it a paranormal leaf blower?
You hear that leaf blower? It's a ghost.
You hear it?
Yep, it's a ghost on cue.
Can you imagine?
Incredible. Perfect timing. Thank you.
Perfect timing. God, I was just saying that I don't believe in ghosts, and now the phantom leaf
They heard
blower.
that you didn't believe in them, so they're like, let me just.
I'm like, oh, hell no. No, but no supernatural experiences. But what I do have is the worst imagination, this like overactive imagination, where like maybe it's because I've just like pumped myself full of like horror movies, but like the second I wake up in the middle of the night and I need to go downstairs for a glass of water, all I'm thinking about is everything that's in that room with the lights turned off, and I'm just like, oh my God, there's something else in here, isn't there? So even though it's not real, I'm imagining it and I'm projecting it. So that's enough. Like that's almost like more than enough. Like I'm my own worst enemy when it comes to believing or not believing. I don't believe, but I want to believe.
Yeah, you just terrified me again there, Clay. In terms of, you said like, if I believe it, it's real enough. Have you heard of the lamp story?
Wait, yes, I have.
Yeah.
Can you tell it again?
Terrifying. Though? I don't know if I could do it justice, but what I would say is everybody go and look and research the lamp story. Essentially, a guy he got into a bit of a fist fight, and I'm not going to do it justice, but I'm going to try. He got into a little bit of a fist fight. He got knocked down to the ground and he hit his head. And then immediately after that, he woke up and went on to live his life. He got married, he had children, everything like that. And then a few years down the line, he was looking at a lamp one day and there was something off about the lamp. It was really quirky and he couldn't quite figure out what was wrong with it. So he was sat looking at this lamp for days. And then it suddenly snapped him out of the reality that he was in. And he went back to a few days after he'd been attacked and hit his head. And he woke up and everything he'd imagined, or everything he'd experienced, he had imagined the whole thing. His wife, his kids, the whole 10-year plus period, bang, just completely collapsed by a lamp.
Oh my God.
And when you said that, like, if I believe it, it's real enough, that brought me back to that moment. And I thought, Jesus, imagine if that was the case. It's such a terrifying thought. I don't know why I've just inflicted it on everyone again. But
the curse spreads anew.
If everyone has nightmares tonight, blame Chris.
Yeah. And on the back of that, I wanted to say paranormal experiences. I've never had one apart from last week. Last week was my first one. So
Really?
I was leaving. Yeah, I'm going to tell you what really quickly. I was leaving a job because I start in a new place next year, and it was my last day. And I'm walking down a corridor, and these corridors have big fire doors at the end of each corridor, and they're industrial strength ones, so you couldn't open them. And anyway, I'm walking towards the doors, and normally you just open them yourself, but it takes a little bit of a force to sort of pull the door open. But anyway, the doors opened by themselves, just enough for me to get through them, but big enough that it wasn't just like, someone pushing it and running away from the other side. It was big enough and slow enough, actually, with the process of the doors to let me through. And then I felt a cold chill all across my body. And I walked through the doors, but I remember in the moment, I wasn't scared, but I definitely knew that something wasn't right. And then I went through the doors and the doors closed. And there was no wind from either side of the doors. There was no way that could be a possibility. And there was nobody else around. And I thought, that is my first sort of weird, I don't know, I couldn't explain it. And that's why I think it's paranormal, because there is no way that should have happened, but it did. So yeah, paranormal experience.
Not going through that door.
Building telling you bye.
Yeah, well, that's exactly what I thought. I thought, I've been here for 2 years, and there may be. And I spoke to the caretaker, and I told him what had happened. And he said, "Oh, did it happen?" And it was in a school. So he said, "Did it happen on the maths corridor?" And I was like, "Well, just above it." He went, "Yeah, things like that happen to me all the time. It's weird." So yeah, So if you've had a paranormal experience and you're watching now, because I know there's a fair few of you, drop it in the chat and we'll talk about it. We've got a few questions coming up as well, which are fantastic, and I will get to those. Halo's comment just made me laugh, so I'm going to put it on the screen. I would have shat myself. So I'm glad that didn't happen. But yeah, put your questions in the chat now and we'll get onto them. Anna, have you got any questions before we go on to the next bit?
I think my question is there any moment when you were writing any of the stories that you just pitched to us that really made either the story or like the writing process really stand out to you? Was there something that kind of brought all of it into focus for you?
Wow, that's so tough. I don't know about you, but like, I feel like I'm the last to know what I'm writing and how I'm doing. And I will cop to needing people. I'm a pretty needy writer. My editors probably hate me for this, but like, I just need engagement. Like I need beta readers. God bless the beta readers, because like, because I don't trust myself. Here's the thing. The answer to your question is like, whenever I feel that like, oh yeah, like this is good, I'm like, it's like, oh, like that's usually the worst stuff. Like it's so kind of like bizarro because like the moment I'm like, yes, I've done it, you know, that's when I share that, people will be like, huh, like, you know, but like I find in the revising, it's a 1, 2, 3 step process where it's like I write the draft, I share the draft, someone else reads that draft, and then I can talk to someone about that draft. Like, what is this? Like, what the heck have I done? And like, it's the kind of articulation that I start to kind of understand the story. I understand the book. So like first drafts, always awful. First drafts are always like, what? Like, it's just like, what are we doing here? And I have put my beta readers through such hell because they have to talk to me about it and kind of hold my hand through it. And that's my discovery. Like, that's my, like, oh, okay, so that's not landing, or, oh, okay, that maybe that's what the story is about. So like, I revise a lot. I tend to do twice the amount of drafts that probably other people want to do, you know, and that's just because I'm using the revision process as a discovery process to kind of land at the story, to land at what the book or the story itself wants to be. And I'm usually the last one to know.
Love that. Right, Linda, you put in the chat, I've had some paranormal experiences, kind of freaky to be honest. And then you said, I worked at a haunted restaurant for 2 years. So I'm going to ask you to expand on that. I'm going to play a little tiny video, and then we're going to get some of the questions. They are coming into the chat, which is great. So if you've got any more, please put them in. We've got about 4 minutes left of the show, unless Clay doesn't mind hanging on for a little bit longer.
Let's hang. We're here. Let's do it.
Brilliant. Right. So I'll play this quick video, and then we'll get into it. So, community questions. Okay, so the first question from the community is from Halo. Thank you. Do you find anything unique horrifying? For instance, ladybugs scare the kidneys out of me.
I don't know if this is the right answer, but the first thing that came to my mind is I have a profound fear of hermit crabs. I just don't like hermit crabs. I had a bad moment with a hermit crab when I was a kid, and it like pinched my ear, and haven't, like, the trauma of that is still embedded into me. So like just even talking about it, I'm just like, yeah, hermit crabs.
Yeah,
like
holding, it's scary that when
like holding a seashell up to my ear, like because you can hear the ocean in it. I never do that because like I just believe that there's a hermit crab like hiding in there, and it's just gonna wait and like pinch my ear. Never do it.
Yeah. When we've talked about what scares people in the past, I think 100% of what scares people stems from childhood into adulthood. I don't know. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. There's 26 plus people watching in the chat. If anything has developed in your adult life that you are now scared of, let me know, because I'm really interested to see if you can become scared in adult life. I suppose you probably could, but let's ask some more questions because I keep waffling. So, Linda, your question. You have to write a book splicing horror with an unusual side genre. Which second genre do you choose?
I don't know if it's unusual, but I do love true crime and horror, and to me they're kind of running a little parallel to one another, so maybe it's not too unusual. But I love the intersection of and true crime is such an odd phrase to use, but like that idea of like something that kind of has a correlative or a root in reality, but often is kind of like unexplained or unsolved. Like unsolved mysteries to me is that weird intersection of like something that feels both real and unreal, because like every so often I'll be like, you know, them talking about, you know, alien abductions or Bigfoot, and, you know, the supernatural and the unexplained. And I don't know, like that to me is kind of chocolate and peanut butter. That's my Reese's Pieces.
Yeah, I love that. Troy, thank you for your question. So here's Clay. You are involved or always involved in events with other authors. Is there any particular horror author whose writing scares you, or they themselves scare you? That second bit, be careful, but yeah.
Hey Troy, how's it going? It's funny, you know. I don't know if it's the events that would scare me. I mean, like, I don't trust Ron Malfi as far as I can throw him. That guy, watch out for him. You know, he's a doozy. But I love his stuff. I'll read Ron Malfi forever and ever. I just read, this is not an event thing, but I'm going to do this so that I can pull this book out. I just finished this book last night, and I don't think it comes out until 2025. But if you like Dennis Mahoney, if you're out there, Our Winter Monster is nuts. This book scared me. It's the best. It's like the best couples therapy horror novel I've ever read. It's people are just gonna scratch their heads with it, but it is such a lovely book. And you know, I've never met Dennis, but now I don't want to meet Dennis because I don't trust him. I don't trust that guy. So Troy, watch out for Dennis Mahoney, wherever he may be.
Brilliant. Anna, do you mind asking some of the staple questions while I'm just going to expand on Linda's story? So I asked Linda to talk about her experiences at this haunted restaurant, and she said a plastic cup flew across the room at me, shattered by my head, and a door with no external handle started shaking violently, some others as well. And then she's talked about that. So she put a broom, she corrected herself in the next moment, flew off the wall, and nuggets left overnight were hot, but the oil was cold, plus during my childhood. So yeah, I love it when people are almost, you know, impacted by paranormal experiences on a regular basis. We had Catriona Ward on the show, and she is who is haunted as a person. You know, she talks about her experiences all the time, and it freaks me out every single time.
She's amazing. I love her.
Brilliant. Anna, if you get to one of the staple questions, and then we'll start to wrap it up.
Sure. What does success look like to you? Like, you're 50 years down the road, you're looking back at your life and your career. What does success look like to you?
I mean, I'm not a New York Times bestseller. I'm not like the list of all the things I'm not is pretty substantial. But the one testament to success is that I've been able to do it, that I've been like in the industry, that I've been able to survive somehow and support a family doing it. Like that to me, like, it's not very flashy. And like, I'm still at a place where I have to like convince the majority of people to kind of give me a chance. But like, I still get to do it. I still get to write. And I just want to keep that going. I just want to keep on the hamster wheel. Like, I just want to, like, success to me, it's not about like 6-figure deals. It's not about, you know, I mean, that stuff would be lovely. But like, to me, like, truly the kind of testament to success is that if I can look back, you know, however many years from now and just be like, I just got to keep doing it. I got to keep telling the stories that I wanted to tell. And someone out there believed in me enough to give me an opportunity to tell those stories. And I got to support my family doing it. Like, that's just like, that's success.
And Clay, off the back of that, I'm going to say, you know, you've got that 6-figure deal. Everything's gone swimmingly. You've carried on for another 20 plus years. You've written a host of other books. But I'm very much aware that we're on the internet right now, and it's being recorded, and this recording will probably outlive all of us. So if you could go back and, let's say somebody's picking up your body of work, about to use your characters in a story, what would your advice be to them? What do you want to say? And you can threaten to haunt them if you want.
So wait, the question is, someone's gonna pick up my books and use my characters, read my character?
Yeah, they're going to use them. They're going to, maybe it's going to be a spin-off. Maybe it's going to be, another series with that character, things like that. So what are you going to say to them?
I mean, go with God. God bless. Have fun. I don't know why you guys are doing it, but more power to you. I had a blast with them when I had them. And then I gave them away to the readers. And then the readers had their kind of journey with them. And God, the notion of like coming back to any of these characters is so mind-blowing to me. Like I almost like refuse to believe. I'm rejecting your question on some kind of innate, like no one's ever gonna do that. Like the time capsule of this video will hopefully prove I'm wrong. But if anything, I will eat crow. I will eat my words. But I will be long and dead, so come and get me and put my head in cryo something or other and wake me up and be like, we did it. We rebooted What Kind of Mother?
Nice.
I'll be like,
I like it.
I'll eat my shit.
Love that.
Yeah, I love that. Definitely. So hopefully it does happen. Well, maybe not the cryo head thing. That'd be a bit creepy. But I do like the idea of somebody
fall out and be like, why, God, why did you bring me back?
Yeah.
Oh God, that'd be in the void.
Yeah, in the void. Oh, that again is terrifying in itself. The void. Yeah, let's not get into that. But yeah, Clay. People are commenting in the chat just obviously how genuine and kind you are. He's either the nicest guy or has a bucket out with body parts in his basement. Yeah, I love that. And yeah, Linda, thank you as well. An inspirational clay voodoo shrine for writing, so that may exist in the future. But Clay, before we go, we always give people the opportunity just to say, obviously, where people can find them on social media and things like that. And yeah, I'm going to throw in one last question. If you could direct people who are watching the show or maybe have seen your work for the first time, where would you want to direct them? What book or story would you like to direct them towards that's yours?
I mean, I feel like What Kind of Mother has the most reach right now. I have a soft spot for this book that came out a couple of years ago called Ghost Eaters. That seems to be the one that lands the most with folks. So I might suggest Ghost Eaters. It's it's a doozy. Just imagine like a haunted drug. You can pop a pill and see the dead.
Yeah, it's a brilliant concept and a great book. Yeah, and finally, where can people come and stalk you if they wish on social media?
I'm pretty Googleable. Like I'm out there on the platforms. I'm trying to navigate social media. So Instagram, Twitter, what's not Twitter? I'm seeing if Threads works, if Blue Sky works. Facebook is still going. Yeah, I'm donutting myself. I'm sprawling. Like I'm on all of these platforms and I'm on none of these platforms. So I'm figuring it out. We're all figuring it out, right?
Every day.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, well, thank you very much for coming on the show today. It's been an absolute pleasure to chat to you.
This was a blast. Let's do it again.
Yeah, we'll definitely do it again. We're looking to, in the future, maybe do a collection where we look at what's the story and we basically go to the nuts and bolts of the story and we pick it apart. Absolute spoilers galore. We talk about everything as a group, as a collective, what we've enjoyed, even the bits that we didn't like. Yeah, and we're gonna maybe start off with the not having the authors present, and then hopefully we can get the authors present afterwards. So it's like an online book club where we go deep into the story and find out what it's all about. So yeah, we'd love to have you on the show again. And obviously you've got a whole host of books coming out, and it'd be great to get you back on and talk in a bit more depth about some of them.
Yeah, count me in.
Brilliant. Right. Well, until Friday, but it's next Friday. So until next Friday, folks, thank you very much. Anna, have you got anything to say before we go?
Have a great weekend, everybody.
Have a great weekend. That's a great one. And if you see Agate in a bush, please save him and direct him back.
Put him
to
in
the
a
Writing
cabin, send
Community
him
Chat
home.
Show.
With Anna's luggage.
Definitely do that. Yeah. And don't go into any haunted restaurants, and don't look at lamps for too long. That would be my last little bit of advice.
Unnecessarily restrictive. Unnecessarily restrictive.
Yeah. But bye for now. This is the bit where we wave and I end the show and look professional.